Hey, how you doing, Mr. Billingsley? Thank you again for joining us on today's episode of Leveling Up with Benjamin Banks for our 2-year anniversary.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm doing great, and it's an honor to be here on your anniversary episode.
Yeah, man, it's like I was telling these guys when we first started Leveling Up with Benjamin Banks, our second episode was about Cowboy Bebop, and like now for our anniversary episode, it's kind of like it's come full circle. Now that we have a legend like yourself up here, you played Jet on Cowboy Bebop. It's an anime that we loved growing up and we still love to this day. So we definitely appreciate you coming on and being the guest of our 2-year anniversary.
Well, yeah, as I say, it's my pleasure, and I appreciate you guys. I really do.
So, like, how are you holding up with everything that's going on in the world right now, and how are you and your family doing?
Well, personally, we're doing okay. We've lost some relatives and to the virus who weren't close relatives; they were distant cousins. But yeah, the whole situation is sad, and being with the way we think about things, our personal situation is okay. But it's just painful to see how many people are in pain around the country and around the world who are suffering. It's really hard. I go to sleep thinking about it, wake up in the morning thinking about it. But I know I'm not unique that way. So you find a way to get through it as best you can. But the loss of life is heartbreaking. Because there's so many people I think we lost that we didn't have to if we had handled this thing right, correctly from the beginning. But we have to move forward and do what we can do. But listening, watching, and hearing people's stories about their loss of loved ones and the way that they passed is just heartbreaking. And I know you guys feel the same way. But for your own mental health, you got to try to move on and not absorb too much of it. So I try not to watch too much news.
Yeah.
Because it brings you down so far. Periodically, I kind of put my head in the sand, and because it wears on me. So, but it's as I say, it's my situation is fine, and I just ache for so many people.
Yeah. And my condolences, and I'm sorry for your loss, because it's like I totally understand with everything that's going on in the world right now, and this is a serious matter that people need to take serious. Like, it's not a joke. It's not what's the word that they say?
Hoax. It's not a hoax.
It's a hoax. There we go. Thank you. Like, yeah, it's a hoax and all this stuff. Like, this is legit, and I've had family members that have had it as well, and like I can, just be thankful and blessed that it's like, that they were able to heal from it. So it's like, I agree, like people, they do need to take it serious, and the world just needs to come together so that way we can all be a better place.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's like Rodney King said years ago, can't we all just get along? But it's a rough world. It's a rough world, and it's one of the great sadnesses is that there are so many people in our country who I'm just amazed at the numbers of people in our country who are, let's just be kind to say, they're thinking the wrong way.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's actually made me a little bit paranoid.
Oh no, I totally understand that, man. I totally understand that. I mean, like, just even going out of the house, man, it's like you just never know when something might happen to you. Especially with everything that's happened this year with like George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and stuff like that. Ahmaud Arbery, like I'm somebody, like I take exercising serious and working out, jogging around the neighborhood, and it's like when the stuff happened with Ahmaud Arbery, it's like it made me think. It's just like, man, I could be out here jogging one day and somebody could see me and think that I'm a threat, and like it shouldn't be like that. You know what I'm saying? It's like we should be able to live our lives and do what we want to do while feeling safe. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. It's a real sadness that, I mean, people of color have been, and rightly so, paranoid, forever, because you never know when something's going to happen. But we don't live with a white privilege. We can't relax that way. We always have to be kind of like wary of people looking over our shoulder, and wondering, oh, wait a minute, this situation looks like it's not going the right way and whatever. So, when I go to the conventions, which I haven't been to, this year, but when I go to the conventions in certain parts of the country, I'm careful to have a lot of people around me, and if I sightsee or whatever, then I make sure I don't go any place alone, because you never know, as you said. So, yeah, it's a great sadness, because it seemed like we were making good progress, and then all of a sudden this hit. Yeah, and it seemed like our country was set back. But at least, I guess, one positive aspect is that we found out what's going on. That there's some 75 million people that I have to be careful of. I worry for my grandchildren. What kind of world they're going to be in. I had 2 granddaughters and a grandson, and I just there's plenty to worry about.
That's for sure.
No shortage of stuff to worry about, But thank goodness we have anime and video games that we can escape. We can escape.
Yeah,
right. Our minds a break for a half a minute.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to keep revolving around this particular topic, but we actually podcasted on Lovecraft Country, and I don't know if you saw it, but it seemed like it was the show that we needed to see during all this crazy stuff going on.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't aware of that, but yeah, sometimes you just have to bite the bullet, face reality, and deal with it. But you do also have to find some ways to escape, because you'll overload your emotions and your nervous system, because so there's so many sad stories going on, and seeing people, our frontline workers in tears trying to explain what's going on, and it's not even their family members. It's like such a sadness, and to have such a large swath of our country not even acknowledging it, and
right.
And this whole nonsense about not wearing masks. I just don't get it. It's just hard for me to understand how so many people don't care about other people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually I couldn't believe it, but I'm partially a frontline worker myself, and I was out on my route the other day, and there was actually a guy who came into the store not wearing a mask, and it was just the weirdest thing at this stage in it, and knowing what we've lost already. There's still people willing to not wear them. It was kind of mind blowing.
You in a business where you got the public coming in constantly, right? So you're interacting with the public constantly, and these people coming in without masks, they just have to put themselves in your shoes for a half a second, and they would put on a mask. But for some reason, these people have no empathy, and they don't care about anybody but themselves. And I hate to say it, but it seems like that's one of the big differences between the right and the left in our country. That people on the left, we care about others, and it's not just ourselves. And the people on the right, the people don't want to wear the mask. They're just thinking about themselves. They're not thinking about the people who are. And we're lucky to have restaurants and services going on. And you think that they would cooperate as much as possible to try to keep the frontline people safe.
Yep.
Yep. And even if someone, a frontline worker, is, whether it's a restaurant or wherever it is, even if you don't catch the virus, I know you're paranoid about it, and you're just worrying at the end of a day's work. You say, I hope I didn't get it. I hope I didn't get it. And so, and then you have people waltzing in without a mask and want to fight about it.
Yeah. It was actually mind blowing. It was literally the day before yesterday. And, I was just at a convenience store picking up some stuff, and then comes right in like nothing happened, like nothing's going on. Yeah. So. Yep.
I'm going to have to take one break right quick. I'm going to have to run and get a battery.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
Okay. All right, cool.
How crazy is this?
Hey, guys,
this is amazing.
Yeah, that's what I say. Like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, my God, man. It's like real talk. Like, I don't think, like, we've started an episode like this, like, with some real stuff in a hot minute,
It's refreshing in a way, because you can only dwell in your own head for so long.
Right, yeah.
And this is kind of like an outlet you know, even if you had been thinking about it since it happened, at least it's giving us a chance to get it off our chest. Yeah. And who better to have with us than Jet Black himself? So
Yeah.
This is awesome.
I agree. Yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, we typically like to be the getaway.
Yeah.
You know, when I'm from the BS.
Yeah.
But like you just said, the narrator, Jet Black himself, is here.
Oh, the troublemaker's back.
Yes.
That's it.
You're speaking facts right now, man. You're good. You're good. We love it here, man.
Yeah, man.
Okay, so we can take it from here. Are you ready, Mr. Billingsley?
I am ready.
Okay. All right, cool. All right, so moving along, let's tell everybody, because we know who you are, but for everybody that doesn't know who you are, tell everybody, like, what is your origin story? Like, who was Beau Billingslea before we came to love him for the great actor that he is?
Oh, thank you for your kind words. Well, I was born in Charleston, South Carolina. Where are you guys, by the way?
Virginia.
Virginia.
Yep.
All right. Yeah, I was born in Charleston, South Carolina, and then my father was in the service in the Army, and that's how my mom and dad met in Charleston. My father's from Georgia, my mother's from South Carolina, and then, but I grew up in Connecticut. We lived in Camden, New Jersey for a minute, across the river from Philly, and but I grew up in Connecticut. I had a wonderful childhood. You know, my parents were forward thinkers, so you know there was no physical discipline in our house, and get this one, no yelling. I mean, I not only did my parents not hit me, they didn't even yell at me. You know, if I messed up, my father would say, "Come on," you get this real soft talk. Whenever he started talking really soft, I said, "Okay, I'm in trouble now." You know? But I would be punished. But no, there was no hitting. And it's funny. I remember there was one time I did something I wasn't supposed to do. It was a bunch of us, about 5 of us, the kids that I would hang out with when I was a young fellow. I had a collie dog that looked like Lassie, and I named him Bullet after Roy Rogers' dog. I don't know if you guys heard of those guys, Roy Rogers, but I named him Bullet, and it was a little collie dog, and it was like a movie. Wherever I went, he went, right? And it was 4 of us kids. We roam the woods and just make forts, and I'd have a slingshot in my back pocket that I made, and I have a hatchet, a little hatchet going through my belt, and we roam the woods and make forts, and and that was that was my childhood, and I started playing sports early, and that's how my self-identification evolved into that of an athlete, and but I was a pretty good student, so anyway, I as I said, I identified as an athlete when I was in high school. My senior, I was offered a contract to play professional baseball with it was then the Kansas City Athletics. Now it's the Oakland A's.
Yep.
But they were the Kansas City Athletics at that time, and I remember they offered me 18 grand, and I was 17 years old, and I was 18 grand. You know what I mean? That's some money.
Yeah.
Wow.
So my dad said, "Okay, well, let's sit down. Let's talk about this." And that's where my dad was. So he said, "So let's assume you signed a contract. You're playing professional baseball. You're playing in a B or C league down there in Texas on some dirt fields with no fans in the stands, and then let's say you don't make it for some reason. What do you got?" And I said, "Well, nothing." He said, "So on the other hand, you have a scholarship to go to play football in college. You can let's say you go to college, and maybe they'll let you. Maybe you can play baseball in college, but you get your education, and then maybe you can sign a contract. But at least if you sign a contract then and it doesn't work out, you have an education." He said, "But it's your decision." So he put it like that. So I said, "Well, I'm going to go to college." And he said, "Good thinking. But that was the way he was. He would talk to me and bring me around to the right decision on things. He didn't dictate to me.
Right.
And so that's what I did. I went to college on a football scholarship, and as fate would have it, I was captain of the football team, my college football team, and I had letters for the NFL draft, and but I was in ROTC, so I had to. And that's the Reserve Officers Training Corps. And back in those days at University of Connecticut, all the men who went to college had to take 2 years of ROTC. Vietnam was raging, and so my father told me, he said, you're probably going to have to go in the service. So with your personality, if you don't become an officer, you're going to end up in the stockade. Because I guess apparently I didn't like being told what to do. So anyway, I did, and I continued on with that. So when I graduated from college, I was commissioned as second lieutenant, and then, but I didn't even return the letters from the NFL. I still have them. They send you packets to convince you that they're called like the New York Football Jets or the Cleveland Browns Football Club, and they would send you a packet with like a little a questionnaire you fill out for your times and all of that, and you're in 40s and 60s, and then they would send you a pamphlet, your life with the Jets, and explain how your life would be, right? And they also have a pamphlet, your wife's life with the Jets. So, so they want to convince you to come play with the Jets or the Cleveland Browns or whatever. And but I didn't turn them in because I knew I had to go in the military or go to graduate school. So I decided I went to law school, and so the Army gave me a delay of 3 days before going on active duty. So I went to law school, and that's when my third year of law school. That's when I started acting. I started going down to New York, and I had no training or anything. But one of the things that really bit me was when I was in college, as I said, I was captain of the football team. One of my fraternity brothers was directing a play called Emperor Jones by Eugene O'Neill. And the setup is that he's the emperor of a Caribbean island, and he's losing his mind, and he's being chased by these ghosts, in his mind. And he had a gun with a silver bullet to kill the ghosts and all of that. And so he was saying that he thought it would be cool if the captain of the football team did a play. And because at that time, the campus was really divided because of Vietnam. The theater arts people and the fine arts people would pick at our ROTC drills, when we were walking around with a rifle and all that, and call us names, and we would call them names. And so it was a really heady time because of Vietnam, because everybody had some connection to Vietnam, whether a friend had died there or a relative or whatever. And so anyway, I did it. And I remember when I told a couple of my teammates I'm going to do a play, he said, "Oh, Beau is doing a play." I said, "No, don't go there. Don't go there." So anyway, and it actually had that effect, like my teammates came, and people in theater arts and fine arts came, and intermission they'd be mingling and talking, and it actually did have that effect. We felt that it tended to calm down the factions on campus who were arguing and fighting and scrapping and carrying on. But anyway, yeah, so I went on to, that experience was really wonderful. So I went on to law school, and my third year of law school, I was thinking, what, I think I might want to try this acting thing, right? So, but also I have to add this in my third year of law school, now I've been in college for 7 years, right? So my third year of law school, I was asked to play semi-pro football for this little semi-pro team that was in my town. They figured I would put people in the stands, a local athlete coming back home. Yeah. And so I did that in the fall of '68, I guess. Yeah. And the head New England scout for the Houston Oilers, who are now they're in Texas, saw me, and then so they scheduled this tryout for me, a special tryout Saturday morning. The press was there. My father filmed it. And it was funny. So I was playing quarterback. So he had me throwing passes and blah, blah. And so we're in the locker room, and he's asking me, and come to find out, he knew my medical history from the time I was in Pop Warner. When I was 11 years old, I broke my ankle playing Pop Warner football. He knew about that. He knew about all of my medical history. I had knee surgery in high school. And then he said, you could have gone pro out of college, but you weren't interested. But now you're interested. I said, yeah. And so, and he didn't, I didn't say anything about the fact that when I got out of law school, I had to go in the Army. But I figured maybe I can squeeze 1 year in the NFL. I just wanted to squeeze in 1 year in the NFL. And so he said, "Okay, I want to bring you down to Houston, let the big boys look at you." And he said, "I'll be in touch." And then he found out I had to go to the military and I was not available. the Army takes priority, right?
Right.
So,
Of course.
you can't say, "Oh, I changed my mind." So, although I tried that, but yeah. So anyway, that was my my third year in law school, and then after that, that's when I decided I'm going to try this acting thing. And luckily, our next door neighbor had a friend who was in New York. He was a director and a cameraman for commercials. So I contacted him, and he said, "Yeah, come on down." Tony Cirillo, he was gay. He said, "Come on down. Now's a good time." And so I went down. He was filming a Van Heusen shirt commercial. So I just watched and observed, and then he told me what to do. I had to get photos. I had to get an answering service, and I had to join the unions. And he told me how to do that. And at that time, you could just walk in off the street and join AFTRA, American Federation of Television Radio Artists. And once you had a primary union like Equity or AFTRA, then you can join SAG. So that's what I did. I paid my money, my $220, went down to SAG. I think it was Madison Avenue in the city, and paid my $110 because it was half price for SAG at that time if you had a parent union, as they call it. Joined SAG and got this magazine, this newspaper called Backstage, where you could dig up auditions, and I started. And it was interesting because it was one of those things like, I had never studied acting, and I'd only acted in one play, but I was figuring, hey, it's acting. How hard can it be, right? It's like, but that comes from having maybe an overabundance of self-esteem. So I said, yeah, I'm good at everything I do. So I went to New York, and I was lucky. I was, I had success there, and then I went in the military and did plays in the military. And here's a little side story. I was on orders to go to Vietnam, and I was supposed to be an advisor out in the village. And the expected life expectancy of an advisor was about 30 days. They killed the advisors off and they put another one in there, right? But it wasn't so much that. It was that Martin Luther King was saying that those people didn't do anything to us. We don't have freedom in Georgia and South Carolina. Why are we going over there killing those people for their freedom, right? To try to get their freedom. So anyway, when I got the orders to go to Vietnam, I said, I talked with my dad about it, and he said, well, as long as you're prepared to pay the consequences, because guys were going to Canada and all that. And I said, well, I'm prepared. I was ready to go to the stockade, but I said, but I don't believe in this war. I'm not gonna go. And they said, oh, okay, fine. We have a program. They call it voluntary indefinite. If you give us an extra year, we'll send you to Germany. I said, what? Is it that easy? They said, yeah, that's all. Yeah. And I said, oh, okay. But I was an officer, so that every private who goes in couldn't do that. I was an officer, and they didn't want a big ugly publicity thing of a black lieutenant. I was a lieutenant at that time. I ended up being a captain. A black lieutenant put in a stockade, kind of like the Muhammad Ali situation.
Right. Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so that was because I wasn't anti-military. I was just anti-Vietnam War.
Right.
And then I went to Germany, and as fate would have it, I had an opportunity to do plays. I did Bell Book and Candle. I did Street Scene, my first musical. I did Bad Seed, and I did Dracula. I played the lead in Dracula.
That's pretty sweet.
which was, so I got my feet wet in the acting thing, and then during that period of time, I decided that's what I wanted to do with the rest of my life because I just loved it so much. And then when I got out of the military, my last duty station was in San Francisco at the Presidio, and then I came down to LA and started my journey. Excuse me. I remember it was funny. One of my father's brothers, my Uncle Will, he was the guy. He was all the cousins, everybody's favorite uncle. I guess every family probably has one of those guys.
Yep.
He was just so cool with all the kids, right?
Yeah.
And so he called me. He said, he talked real fast like my father and all his brothers. He said, "Boy, what you doing in Hollywood? You don't know nobody in Hollywood. Get your butt back home and get a job." I said, "Okay, Uncle Will. I'm gonna give this a shot." And I said, "And if it doesn't work out, I'll go back to practicing law. That's not a big deal." And as I say, as fate would have it, I had a certain amount of success, and I came down here, and even though I didn't know a soul, I was able to make my way and voice acting wasn't in the picture at all. And, nobody really, you didn't go to New York or come to LA to be a voice actor in those days. So it was just to be an on-camera actor. And I was, as I say, I was lucky that I was able to. My first job out here was on this show called Barnaby Jones with Buddy Epson. And the director was Leo Penn. Does that name ring a bell? Sean Penn's dad.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Holy cow.
So Sean's dad was my director of my first TV show out here. And he took me under his wing and he helped me along. So I've been really lucky that, I had an angel in New York to get me started, tell me what to do. And then when I came out here, I just happened to run into Leo, and he kind of mentored me along too, and gave me jobs and helped me out. So I've been so fortunate in my life. I can't tell you. It's so blessed. And as I say, it started with having two wonderful parents who, growing up in the Jim Crow South, they didn't have fun lives. My mom and dad.
Right.
That's one of the reasons they got out of the South. And so, it wasn't all peaches and cream in Connecticut either, but it was a lot better than down south. My father couldn't buy a house. He had to get a white friend to buy a house in Connecticut, and then buy it from him. That type of thing. The discrimination was kind of subtle up north. And I remember we were playing baseball. I think it was Pony League baseball, and we were sending a team down to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. On an all-star team, and I was the best player in the league, right? So, and then they told me, they said, well, you can't go because Fort Lauderdale, they said they didn't want any colored kids. We were colored then. Everybody called it colored, right? Fort Lauderdale didn't want any colored kids down there. So my teammates went down and I stayed home. It was that type of discrimination, which is subtle. I wasn't traumatized. I felt badly, but when they came back, I said, "How was it? You guys have fun?" They said, "Yeah." And but that was the lifestyle in Connecticut. But we weren't fearing for our safety like people in the South were. The fire hoses and dogs, weren't sicked on us up in Connecticut. So. That was a wonderful thing that my parents did. They were toying with bringing us going to Detroit because the auto industry was billowing and there were a lot of good jobs. But my mother had an uncle who lived in Connecticut, so we went to Connecticut instead. So that's pretty much brings us to Hollywood.
Hey, that was a really good order.
Wow. Yes, it was.
It's like I felt like I learned so much. I did do my research for this episode, but it's just like, man, it's like, you went in depth with everything, and I really appreciate that. The question that I want to ask you about, once you got into Hollywood, because you served, did that help you get roles in Hollywood? Like, whether it be playing police officers or playing a thug on a TV show?
No. You have to, you bring yourself back to those times, or imagine those times. Back then, you hid the fact that you were in the military. You didn't tell people. Because, they would spit on us and everything, call us baby killers because of Vietnam. And and if you were in the service, people didn't realize, they didn't think about it, who didn't serve, that you didn't have a choice. I was lucky that I did, but most people did not have a choice. And so it wasn't like, the brothers were, I'm going to Vietnam to kill people, Yeah. You just had to go and do it. And so, but people didn't think it through like that. So that even family members would do that to other family members. I mean, not my family, but I heard so many stories, that they wanted to leave their family and go fight in a war. In Southeast Asia, but so we weren't honored at all. We hid the fact that we had been in the military, and luckily that has changed. Now we honor our service members, but back then, no, you didn't even you just kind of kept it quiet.
Yeah.
But I appreciate the fact now. Like if I wear my hat, I don't know if you can see it. see. Though in those days, I wouldn't wear this thing.
Yeah, the views have changed like severely, I guess you could say. Especially with Vietnam, it was known as one of the ugliest ones that we fought, And like you said, it was, it was a double-edged sword because you guys, a lot of people didn't have a choice, So,
right. Yeah. No. Very few have a choice. With the officers, the program they have is they call it voluntary indefinite, and I don't know if it was because as a safety valve for that situation or not, but. When I mentioned I refused to go to Vietnam, I was refusing a lawful order. That means immediately to the stockade. They came up with that program, so so it diffused it. My situation, but the average person didn't have that. If you weren't an officer, you didn't have that opportunity to do that. So you just had to go, and it was horrible. We lost like 60,000 guys. Soon as the day we left, it became the North Vietnamese, the Viet Cong, they invaded Saigon, and so all of those years, all of those lives were in vain. That country went communist the day we left. So anyway, off that subject.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's what I was gonna say. And so this is about the 70s when you get over to Hollywood.
Yeah, it was actually 76. I came.
76.
Yeah, I was on active duty from 70 to 76 in the Army.
What is it like for an African American to be over in Hollywood at this time trying to get roles and not saying maybe you weren't typecasted because you might have been, I don't know, but what is that like going over there as a black man in 1976, 77 and dealing with, the politics in Hollywood?
Well, to tell you the truth, when I first came here, it was difficult, not just for black African American actors, for everybody if you didn't know anybody. And there was no social media, there was nothing. So the way I got started was I would look in Dramalog, this magazine here, and see where they're casting and send my picture. So it would be cold sendings, and through snail mail.
Right.
I send my picture, my resume, and I would be lucky to get maybe 3 or 4 auditions a year. And obviously, you can't make a living that way.
Right.
But I was lucky that things happen pretty quickly. But in a certain way, I don't know if it would give me it gave me an advantage, but there weren't a lot of black actors, and so that at that time the competition pool was very shallow. There weren't a lot of black actors there, and so from that standpoint, I could say in a certain way I might have had a slight advantage. But and also the way the business evolved, there were a lot of live action shows, so that there would be typically on a guest spot, there would be like the main bad guy is a guest actor, second bad guy, and then maybe 5 or 6 of his, what they call his goons.
His goons, yeah.
And a lot of them were stunt actors, right? So they would do stunts as well. And so there was a lot of work billowing, and there were a lot of action shows, so there were a lot of roles for cops. And so I had a recurring role on this show called Hunter, and as a cop, and I played doctors and lawyers. I remember they had this show called Divorce Court that had been on years ago in black and white TV, and they brought it back, and they wanted all the lawyers to be actual lawyers. Yeah. So that I got in on that, and as a series regular, which was really cool to get a series regular job not too long after coming to Hollywood. I was very, very lucky. But to answer your question, I had nothing to do with the politics of Hollywood. I was just trying to make a buck so I could feed my family, and it was a quest on my part. I had never failed in anything I'd done in my life, and I convinced myself I was not going to fail at this. So it would have been very embarrassing if I went home to Connecticut with my tail between my legs and say it didn't work out. I would have to work a job like a regular human, you know.
Well, Mr. Billingsley, it definitely did not turn on you, and you did phenomenal, and you still are doing phenomenal. So
Thank you so much.
yeah,
Thank
man,
you so much. I
well
appreciate
accomplished. Yes, sir.
So, how was it when you started transitioning into doing voice acting? Like, how did you get into doing that?
It's interesting. When I thought back, this didn't occur to me to not too long ago. One of my first gigs in New York, when I went to New York, I did the voice of a coach in a puppet movie. I voiced a puppet coach, and I had forgotten about that. So early on in my career, I actually did a voiceover and didn't even realize it. But after I'd been out here for a while, it was in the middle of late '80s. A friend of mine, Doug Stone, he was I guess the coordinator of doing the voices of foreign live action movies. Like there would be a German movie, and there would be an African character in the movie. So he asked me if I would voice the African character, and then back in those days you can't get away with it. Now back in those days you can just do a general African accent,
Right.
but now you got Uganda or Nigeria. You got to do your research. But with social media now you can, with the internet, you can look it up and learn the accent. But I went in and I said I'm doing this because of my father.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we did a number of those, and actually, I got to tell you this: we didn't, we work with beeps now, right? You guys are aware of the beeps,
Right.
Yeah, you're in. They cue it up. The engineer cues it up so that they give you 3 beeps, and you speak where the 4th beep will come. So It's like, and you breathe on the 2nd beep, and so it's like beep, breathe, beep, speak. That's what you do, right? But back in those days, we didn't have any beeps. All we had was time codes. So they would play the scene. We have the dialogue here. We play the scene, and we, get a feel for the scene. And then there would be time codes underneath the screen, and you'd look at the time codes and look at the video, and then look at your lines, and then go, right?
Yeah.
And it was
Wow.
tough. It was tough. It was. And especially, there was no training for that. That was total on-the-job training.
Yeah.
There was no class to take or anything. So you just go in and do it. And I remember it was just harrowing. It was so frightening. And I remember I've been in a number of just terrible situations in my life, but I was feeling all these nerves about saying words. My life wasn't in danger, but
Right.
Your pride, you want to do a good job.
Exactly.
You want to do a good job. You don't want them to say, what, Beau, this isn't working out. We're gonna have to replace you. You don't want to hear that, right? So, but anyway, I caught on pretty quick. I'm a pretty fast learner, so I caught on. But anyway, after doing that for a while, Doug asked me if I wanted to do an anime. And I said, well, what's anime? I didn't even know what it was. Because
Right.
back in those days, it wasn't a part of our culture like it is
Yep.
now.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I said, well, what is it? He says, well, this is Japanese animation. I said, oh, okay. All right. He says, you want to do it? I said, yeah, why not? And started doing that. And I said, oh, this is fun. I love doing this. We weren't talking about cartoons, but that was in my mind, Saturday morning cartoons. I grew up watching Saturday morning cartoons, Bugs Bunny and Looney Tunes and all of that stuff.
Classics.
And I was thinking, oh, this is awesome. I'm doing a cartoon. And because I never thought about doing something like that. And then, I did a number of jobs, and half of them I don't even remember. I guess they might be on my IMDb, but I did a number of them. I did the lead OG in this anime called Legend of Black Heaven, and I played a rock musician, and I saved the universe with my music.
That's pretty sick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I guess they did a little of this, a little of that, and then Kevin Seymour is one of the angels who had helped me in my life. Asked me if I wanted to do, Cowboy Bebop, and I said, sure. I didn't even know what it was, but it was work. It wasn't a lot of money, but it was work, and I loved doing the animation, voicing the animation. And so I remember the first day I was thinking Cowboy Bebop. I was thinking cowboys. I talk
Right.
like that, you know.
Yeah.
Thing. I'll be spitting, chewing tobacco, you know. So I remember the first day in the booth, Mary Elizabeth and we were trying to figure out, you know, what kind of voice does this Jet Black have? And as I said, you know, I hadn't seen anything. I wasn't aware of Cowboy Bebop or what it was, so I just went by the name, and I didn't realize that the Bebop was my ship and all of that.
Right.
So I suggested, I said, you know, he talked like a little twang like that, you know. She said, probably not, Beau. She said, let's go out on a limb. Why don't we use your voice and we'll tweak it a little bit? And I was thinking, my voice, that's boring. No, I want to do a character. I don't want to do it. She said, no, we're gonna do. And that's how we ended up with Jet, you know. Hey, Spike, time to eat, you know. Bell peppers and beef.
That's right.
With no
One of the
beef.
greatest anime
That's
characters
right.
of all time.
Oh, thank you.
I was just
Thank
about
you.
to ask you to do
feel
that.
Very lucky to have been chosen to do Jet. I mean, it's had a very positive impact on my life through the convention culture. You know,
Right.
Oh yeah.
because I had, you know, back in the day, I didn't go to any conventions. You didn't interact with your fans. I remember I was on this show, General Hospital, for a while, and every August we'd have a fan luncheon. And so they would arrange that, and so people from around the country and around the world could come, and you know, they pay a certain amount of money, and they'd have a luncheon, and they get a chance to meet us. We sign autographs and everything. And I remember there was one where there was a family from Toronto. It was a family of four, husband, wife, and a teenage daughter, teenage son, and they all came to the General Hospital fan luncheon. I thought, what a great thing! They arranged their family vacation to come to see us. But so there wasn't that interaction. We get fan letters. We get a lot of fan letters on the soap.
Right.
But when the convention started, I mean, this is awesome. You can actually talk to human beings who've seen your work or listened to your work, and that's probably one of the most enjoyable aspects of my life, going to the conventions and talking to fans and actually is listening to fans, because I love to hear the impact that my work has had on people. And I never had any idea, you know, we know we're not doing brain surgery, you know, we're not going to fool ourselves.
Yeah.
But listening to all of the stories, it just warms your heart to hear how your work has positively impacted someone's life. And so often I've heard the stories about people having a hard time in their life, is a bad period in their life, a breakup with a boyfriend or girlfriend, or troubles in college, or you know, whatever it was, and a friend would give them, hey, you know what you need to do? You need to watch Cowboy Bebop. And so they watched Cowboy Bebop and said, oh, it's just like, it was so soothing, and I loved it, and it took me out of my own head, and it just helped me so much in my life. So and of course, not just Jet, but the Raikage and Ogremon and Digimon. I don't know if you guys watch Digimon at all.
Yeah, we're there.
Yeah. I'll say, you know, one of the projects that you worked on, like while you weren't a character up there, you narrated at the start of each episode, which is Outlaw Star, which is it's a very underrated anime. And like how you were saying, how, you know, you've had fans come to you and tell you, like, you know, you helped me out through this, or, you know, like I watched this and I was inspired by stuff. Like your narration in Outlaw Star was amazing, like on every episode, like to, you know, just get things rolling. I wish more people would check that anime out. Like when you ask people about Outlaw Star, like most of the time they're going to say, I've never even heard of it, or I've never seen it, man. But it was such an amazing show. And I wanted to ask, was it because of Outlaw Star? Like, did that kind of help with, you know, you getting on Cowboy Bebop? Because it's like, I kind of feel like both shows are very similar.
Yeah, to tell you the truth, I can't even remember which came first.
We looked it up. Outlaw Star came first.
Yes.
And then,
but literally by like months.
By months.
By like a season. So.
No. Well, you know who the director of Outlaw Star was?
Who was that?
Wendy Lee. She voiced Faye.
Yeah, she did Faye's
Yeah,
voice.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
She directed Outlaw Star.
I did not know that.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was kind of like a family affair.
Yeah, that's
It makes
wow,
sense.
that's
It
awesome.
makes sense now. It's crazy because I know we have Kyle Heber on our podcast, and one of the questions that I had asked him was like, are there ever any times where, because you're a name in the voice acting field, do you still have to audition for certain roles, or is it like, well, I already know who you are, we're just going to bring you in, you can still audition, but we kind of want to give you the role? So is that how it was for Cowboy Bebop and Outlaw Star, because you worked with Wendy?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't remember auditioning. I didn't audition for Cowboy Bebop, and I don't recall actually auditioning for Outlaw Star. No, I didn't have much in it. I mean, it was just a narration.
Right.
But
Oh no, that narration's important, man.
Yeah. I mean, it was important. It was significant, but I didn't have a lot to do.
Right.
But yeah, I get offered jobs, and I also audition. So years ago, it was more offers than audition. But now, in a certain way, the business is kind of flooded, compared to where it was before.
Yeah.
Especially since people have home studios, and back when I came to Hollywood, that's what you had to do. You had to make a commitment. You had to believe in yourself to say, okay, I'm leaving home. I'm leaving my comfort zone, and I'm going to the big time.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody, but I'm going to the
Right.
big time. And so that's the beauty of the business now, that people can dabble in the business without leaving their comfort zone. They can actually be at home in their hometown and do it. And so that's a beautiful thing. But I want to jump back to years ago when I first started my career. I was telling my granddaughter, I remember it was years ago now, my oldest granddaughter, she just graduated from a film school at Occidental College. But I remember telling her, I said, do you know that years ago, I had to drive to the studio to pick up sides to audition? And she said, what? You had to drive to go pick up paper?
Yeah. There was no email.
I said, yeah, there was no email. There wasn't even any fax machines, right? And I remember, the whole setup would be is your agent would call you to see, tell you you have an audition. And the first thing is, how big is the role? Because if it's a small role, you're not going to make two trips to MGM or to Sony or 20th Century Fox. If it's a small role and I get the audition today and I have to go tomorrow, I would just go early tomorrow, instead of driving, making two drives. Because back in those days, gas was, everything was a financial factor.
Right.
I'm trying to support a family. And so if it's a larger role, I like to sleep on it, for obvious reasons. And so that would be the determination. And then when fax machines came, we were jumping for joy. All of the actors, they're gonna send us the size. Isn't that amazing? They're gonna send us the script. Oh my God! And it was a life changer. To be able to. Of course, on the paper it was the print would fade, and the paper would turn yellow, and all of that. But yeah, it was a time where. It was just a different time. Just a totally different time. And now, so much with the electronics and sending information age, where you can send information, you can get information. Like everybody's walking around with an encyclopedia in their pocket. Anything you want to know, you look it up on the phone, right? So, what a wonderful way to live. But back in those days, it was like, first of all, it was hard just to get an audition. We used to say, if you got an audition, that was your success. And if you actually booked the job, then it's like you're over the moon now. I actually booked the job. The people would say, I got an audition. It was so hard to get an audition. But luckily, as I say, for me, I was able to make my way through and to hang tough, and to be able to put food on the table for my family. and live a life and, buy a house and send the kids to college and all of that stuff. But you had to have a lot of self-esteem in one respect, especially if you have people dependent on you. If you're a lone wolf, that's one thing. You can sleep on somebody's couch or whatever. But if you got a family, there's a lot of pressure on your shoulders to feed them. Kids want to eat every day. I don't get it, but they want to eat every day.
Yeah, and something I do though want to bring up before we even move on from this is that Banks had brought up our second episode was Cowboy Bebop. Our very first episode with D was Outlaw Star.
Wow.
Yep.
I didn't even
So
know.
it's like, this man doesn't even know how important to the foundation of the podcast he is.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
He doesn't know.
We're really connected. That's 6 degrees.
And the fact that you nonchalantly mentioned you were on General Hospital, like it's just some random show.
Yeah, General
Yeah,
Hospital
like-
is pretty big.
It's the longest running daytime television show, and how many actors have came from daytime soap operas?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Right.
They had a role on that at one time, right?
Right. There are a lot of actors who left daytime and tried to make it and couldn't and went back to daytime.
Yeah.
Right.
Like so Tony Geary, who I played his best friend on General Hospital, he tried that, and Jeannie Francis tried it. Jeannie left General Hospital. I don't know if you guys remember this, that Luke and Laura business. It might have been before your time, but Luke and Laura got married on General Hospital, and it was one of those situations where it actually went beyond soap, so it became like part of the culture. Luke and Laura.
Right. Yeah.
And then so they both left the show because they wanted bigger careers in regular Hollywood, and they both went back because it didn't work out. I worked with Jeannie Francis when just after she left General Hospital. I worked with her on this miniseries called North and South with Forrest Whitaker, and it was a Civil War epic. And so I had the honor to play an enslaved person, which was. That was rough. It was an experience that was both fantastic and saddening, because I'm portraying an enslaved person. But the irony of that gig was we started off in Charleston, where I was born, at this plantation called Boone Hall outside of Charleston. And my parents came down because they had never been on the set, never saw me work on the set. They saw me in court on a murder trial, but they didn't see me on the set, so they came down and so it was like a reunion, and it was very nostalgic for them. They went down on Beaufane Street where we lived right after I was born, and to Roper Hospital where I was born, and but portraying an enslaved person was a real challenge, because as an actor you're always trying to find a piece of yourself that melds with the character,
Right.
But this was. This wasn't just some show I'm doing. This is that was in my heart. This was historical, and so I meditated and I did everything I could to try to envision myself and to be an enslaved person, and getting into their bones to think, well, what did an enslaved man think about just as he went to bed?
Yeah.
What was on his mind when he first woke up in the morning? In a situation where somebody owned you and could whip you and rape your woman, and steal, take your children, sell your children, and you could do nothing about it. And so, it was a great emotional experience for me, but it was also great from the standpoint of it was a nice gig. I was getting paid good money. I was working it combined kind of like a family reunion. We went to my grandparents' grave out in Olathe, South Carolina, and Olathe. There's a one-horse town called Olathe, Olanta, South Carolina, where my mother was born, and there are people in South Carolina who don't know Olathe. So that tells you how small that town was. There are people in South Carolina who never heard of Olathe, South Carolina. But anyway, which is about 100 miles northwest of Charleston. But portraying a role like that, I was really happy that I got the gig, that we were shooting in Charleston. my parents came down, and but it was also that double-edged sword. I'm sure you can understand that it wasn't total joy because of what I was doing. My character Ezra was an enslaved person, and I say to people, no matter what color you are, imagine yourself a slave.
Yeah.
Just imagine yourself being enslaved by somebody that they can do whatever they wanted to you. They can whip you, they can kill you, whatever they want. They can rape your woman, they can take your children, and you can say nothing and do nothing about it.
Can you even imagine wanting to do that to somebody?
Yeah.
I think that's the other side of the coin too, is that there's something in you that gives you satisfaction in doing that to somebody. That's not even human.
That's an interesting point of view. I hadn't thought about that, right?
Yep.
To be on that other side of that coin, and especially from my standpoint, as I say, my parents, I didn't get spanked.
Right.
I don't know how many people can say that, and especially in the black community, because unfortunately, I talked to my father. I didn't realize, you grow up as you grow up, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize how hard that was as a parent. I remember I called my mom and dad one point. I mean, my son was I just wanted to knock him out, I mean, so,
our parents have been there.
Oh yeah.
And so I called him. I said, "How did you do it? How did you not hit me? How many?" And my father was on it. My mother and I usually did all the talking. My father would do most of the listening. He'd be on the other extension, and I hear him going like that. And my mother said, "Oh, it wasn't easy." I said, "No, I'm sure it wasn't easy." But I remember actually asking for a beating. I lived on a cul-de-sac, and the woods are all behind the houses. And it was a large cul-de-sac where there was a circle, and there was a grassy area in the middle of the circle when you turned around. And but I remember I was being punished, and my father said, "Okay, you can't go out to play for 2 weeks." And I said, 2 weeks? I can't.
Yeah.
You might as well just kill me, 2 weeks I can't go out to play, because as I said, that situation, there was always kids yelling and screaming and laughing, and dogs barking, and it was just like this wonderful place to grow up. And my bedroom was on the front of the house, so the kids, I remember one time the kids came, how we didn't go into each other's houses that much back in those days. And but I remember the kids would come and throw a stone, hit my window, and say, "Hey, Beau, come on out. We're gonna go down in the woods and make a fort." And I said, "I can't. I'm on punishment."
Yeah.
And they said, "Oh, okay." And then they left. It's just I got no commiseration at all. So anyway, I asked my dad. Well, let me tell you this other part of the story is there was this French family, Dufresne, and there were two boys, and they were, like the rest of us, run around and but Mr. Dufresne came out. He was looking for Frankie, and he said, "Have you seen Frankie?" And we're going, "Uh-oh, Frankie's in for it now." And he was wandering around the neighborhood, and he found Frankie, and he was beating him home. He was hitting him something in the back of the head and stuff, and beating him home. And he said, "Oh boy, Frankie's in for it." And then, but then like a half an hour later, Frankie's back out playing. It was. I guess he took his beating. It was over. So I asked for a beating. I told my dad. I said, "Why don't you just give me a beating? Why don't you just give me a spanking, and then I can go out in the place?" He said, "No, we don't have violence. There's no violence in our house."
Yeah.
You're gonna just be in here for. And listen to this. And we had just gotten a color TV set, and I couldn't watch TV.
I remember them days. Oh my God!
When you only had one TV in the house.
That was big, huh?
When you only had one TV in the house in the family room.
There was no such thing as a remote. And you turn the channel like that. And I got yelled at because I was turning the channel too fast. Like that. Stop turning that channel so fast.
Huh?
It's crazy. You talk about like growing up, because when you were coming up and when we were coming up, when we got in trouble, we had to stay inside the house. We weren't allowed to watch TV. We couldn't play our video game systems. But you think about kids nowadays, it's like, when they get in trouble, it's just like, I'm taking your tablet and cell phone away. Go outside and play. Like it's the complete opposite. It's just like, do something.
The kids probably say, I don't know how to go outside and play. What is that? I use my thumbs.
Gotta go figure it
We
out.
were always running and playing and climbing trees and shooting our slingshots and using our hatchets, and everything was just. It was like, especially in the summer, as soon as you ate breakfast, you're out.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
As soon as you ate breakfast, you were out, man.
I remember my mom told me I wasn't even allowed to leave the house till 10. I had to wait till at least 10 to give the parents a chance to wake up and stuff.
Yep. I got
I was ready to go.
Yep.
You had to make sure that you had to make sure that you let them know where you were going at, and if you were going to be outside.
We know that street light rule. The street light.
Yeah.
When the street lights come on, better be in that yard.
But we would disappear. It was because we had the woods in the back, and you were always trying to get the girls to go down in the woods. But all the girls had the strict rules; they did not go into the woods.
Rightfully so.
Yeah.
But my father had a theory. He felt that he said he was never going to introduce violence into our house because he was just teaching me that would be one option in solving conflicts with people. To hit somebody. And right or wrong, that was his theory, that he felt that there was too much of that in the black community. Because what would happen, this is the cycle, what would happen is, when children are around 2, I don't know if you guys have kids. You have kids?
Yeah.
I'm the only kids.
Well, around 2 years old is when they get what they call the terrible twos. My mother called it the terrific twos. That's when the children, they all do it, start rebelling and say, no, I'm not going to do this. No, no, no. But they go through that period. They all do, and then it changes, right? But a lot of people who didn't know that, because my parents read Dr. Spock, so they anticipated all of that. They stayed ahead of my cycles as a child, because there's a period of time where a child only wants the mother. Then the child only wants the father. And then around 10 or 11, the child is afraid of the parents dying for whatever reason, right? And so those are cycles that the child would go through. And if you didn't know it, in our community, a lot of people didn't know that was around 2 years old is when they start hitting their kids, thinking they have a bad seed. Don't you say no to me, Yeah. And that started the pattern that continued on, especially with the boys. And so physical interaction with people like that was like something that they just knew. That's what you did. My mother and father both had the same stories where my grandfather said, go out and pick a switch. So they had to go out and get a switch.
Be sure to smash that like button if you enjoyed this video and get notified every time we upload a new one by subscribing and ticking the bell icon. You can also listen to the full episode by searching for Leveling Up with Benjamin Banks on your favorite podcast app. If you'd like to help support more great content like this, be sure to check us out on Patreon. We'll have the link posted in the description below. Thanks for listening, and see you on the next episode of Leveling Up with Benjamin Banks.